Jeremy Hitchcock here. He is the founder and CEO of Dyn. Dyn does DNS. Don't worry about if you don't know what that is, and we'll explain it. But I want you to understand why I really wanted to have Jeremy here. Every interview that I'm going to be doing here today is going to be with an investor, and my goal will be to talk about how to get money out of the investor's bank account into your bank account. But I want to help you avoid a mistake that just about anyone else out there is going to make, and that's to think that the only way to build a business is with money from investors. Jeremy built a business completely bootstrapped, right?
That's right. Customers' pockets have a lot more money in them.
Customers' pockets have a lot more money. Let's grab a seat and we'll introduce
good.
you, and then we'll walk around and get some questions from the audience. No outside funding. How much revenue did you guys pull in last year, 2013?
A lot. 8-figure number. We haven't disclosed it, but more than 27, which was what we were in 2012.
More than $27 million, and the business was started with no outside funding.
Right.
By a group of college students.
Yeah, 50% year-over-year growth. So we think we have something going pretty well for us.
And the original idea kind of came out of laziness, right? You guys wanted to do something without getting up out of bed. What'd you want to do?
We wanted to, this was the before the days where you had remote access technology. We had some services that allowed you to, if you worked on a lab paper, you printed a lab paper, you turned it in, and it was cold where I went to college, and we wanted to have one less step, so we developed some technology. It was an open source project. People started using it. People started saying, hey, this is great. Can you add this feature? Can you add this feature? And then before we knew it, it was a company.
That's pretty cool. So they could stay in bed, they could print in the lab, and life was easy.
That's right.
All right. That does not get us to $27+ million. I want to understand how you got to that. And one of the first steps that you took was, you had what, 25,000 users when you decided we have to either shut this down or make money, right?
Yeah, and a lot of people, they work on projects. I mean, everybody that's here is probably trying to come up with the next startup. They're in some ways, they're almost forcing it. And what we were doing is that we had this hobby that was really interesting. It was really helpful, and it just started to gain traction. It started to gain users, and you know, it's considered today product market fit or user validation. And so we had this user base, and it was kind of frustrating because they would keep asking for more features, and we're like, oh, we're just going to shut this thing down. And we didn't just want to shut it down because we felt a moral commitment to the user base that we had built up. So we said, all right, we're going to shut it down unless each of you give, on average, $1. 25,000 of you users, $25,000. That should be able to buy unlimited amounts of beer for a college student. We ended up not buying the beer when we had about $40,000 come in, and we were floored, absolutely floored that we had that type of traction, that we had that type of adoption and kind of love of our services, and people really felt it was useful. And so at that point, we decided to build a real company around it.
So, Jeremy, you just went to the mailing list of 25,000 people who use your software, and you said, would you please donate $1? You'll get to use the software either way, but unless we make enough money for it to make a living, we're going to have to shut it down, and $40,000 came in.
That's right. So they had 4 weeks, and we had no idea. We sent it out, thought we were going to be off the hook. Midterms were coming up, so we wanted to get everything out of the way, and as the money came in, we kept thinking, wow, we're really committed to having to do this. And no one had ever said, I want to give you money. I mean, we had a donate page, and occasionally like hardware would show up, or SCSI controllers, or a bunch of other stuff that we'd never found useful. And we never thought about putting asking for $10 or a $20 a year type of service, because there was it was a completely new type of offering. So people didn't really know how to price it or value it. But when they were given the choice about the service continuing to exist or the service not continuing to exist, they said, oh, I'll put in $5 or $10 or $50 or $100, and that added up to quite a bit after a while.
And if you would have put that offer out and not gotten any money, what would you have done?
We probably just would have shut it down, and it would have been a dead startup. Would have been part of the dead pool.
I see. All right, and today you're not, obviously. You're one of the sponsors here at the event. You guys have, like you said, over $20 million, over $27 million.
In 2012.
In 2012 was 27.
I won't say what
2013 was more.
Was more. 2014 will be more. We're having a good time.
All right, and it's all based on DNS. What exactly do you do?
Yeah, so we're kind of the way to think about it. It's around internet performance, traffic management. There's websites that you go to every day, and you type in a computer address in the way that you type in twitter.com or launch.co. And so there's a part of the plumbing that turns that into computer addresses. And so this happens many, many, many times on the internet. And so we run part of the switching system that does routing, traffic management. So we have the visibility about how the internet works, route around outages and other sort of slowness. And we all do this kind of on a millisecond scale. So in some ways we're below where the CDNs live. We're a software as a service load balancer. We also have some other internet type of services where we're doing transactional email and a lot of these kind of internet control plane type of services. So we like to say that we help run the internet.
And if not for you, if anyone wanted to go to Mixergy, they'd have to type in 192.84, whatever, all those numbers.
Yeah, computers do that.
All right, your computers do that.
Our computers do that.
All right, so if someone's listening in the audience and says, you know, I want to duplicate what Jeremy did. I don't want to go to investors. I want to see if I go to my customers and get revenue. The first thing they need to do is get not just thousands of users, which is what you had, but also the ability to continue to email them and stay in touch with them, right?
Yeah, and I mean, there's a lot of kind of growth hacking and other types of conversations that have gone on about how do you build user bases and how do you get conversations. And you can do this on a consumer basis, you can do this on an enterprise basis. And I think that there's probably an equal number of companies that are doing consumer and enterprise, and the SaaS model has really kind of proven itself out. I mean, we were figuring that out along the way. Salesforce was kind of starting up when we got going, so there's been so much adoption and kind of understanding about this reoccurring business model, and especially if you're building an enterprise company, there's these models of like annual advance that people will pay you for an entire year of service. And if you think about cash flow, I mean, that's a super helpful model that helps startups be more capitally efficient.
Is there anyone in the audience who has an audience or a user base but hasn't monetized enough yet?
Who's running a startup? Raise your hand if you're running a startup.
Okay.
Keep your hand up if you have revenue. Oh, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Nice. Mm-hmm.
And I see someone in the back who has a user base, has maybe a little bit of revenue, but he hasn't monetized yet. Let me go grab him. Actually, I'll just bring the mic over. Oh, you do? All right. Then there are two people in the back. All right, Julian.
Hello. Okay, I'll go get first. So we're doing a social network around dance. So we're building user base amongst dancers, and then, of course, having audience creation as well, but we don't plan to monetize it right now because, of course, our model is to have a maximum of people in the platform and then figuring out the way to monetize it, yeah.
Okay. Jeremy,
so do you charge today for that service, or do you work for advertisers or game publishers? I mean, how does that work?
So at this point, we just build a platform for people to enjoy it, and we don't plan on monetizing or even think about monetization before 6 months from now. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's kind of a choice we made. Right now, it's a little gamified because the audiences can give 3 hearts a day to the little dance videos, and that's a way we can monetize it. Like we're thinking about virtual goods, but we don't know yet the exact way we're going to do it.
Yeah, I mean, one thing to think about, especially when you're dealing with kind of aggregating together a variety of different audiences, sometimes you don't know where the value exchange is, and you have to try things out. And the only way to try things out is to actually do them, experiment. And a lot of companies have experimented with different pricing models. Sometimes they get them right, sometimes they get them wrong. I mean, how many people remember Netflix changing their pricing model? Like, I mean that set off a wildfire, and they kind of thought about it. I'm sure they thought about it. They tested it in focus groups, but they said, you know what, that's not the right way for us to go. And they did a mea culpa, and they learned a lot, and they validated the business model that they were in beforehand. So that's something that people I don't think have enough kind of fortitude to try those things out. And sometimes you piss people off. Sometimes you make them angry, but sometimes it's for the better of kind of the vision or the mission of the company.
But Jeremy, would you advise him to start asking for money early on, to do it maybe before he's planning to in 6 months?
Yeah, I mean, 6 months is one of those things where it's like it'll probably always be 6 months away. And I mean, maybe 6 months ago it was 6 months. You always want to think about where you're adding value, because a lot of people that go out and, I'm not an anti-funding person, but I'll certainly wear that hat in this type of context where I think sometimes that the distortion around raising too much or having money, because it's a lot easier to convince a funder or a VC or an angel investor to give you money than it is a customer. And the stronger validation is going to be from a customer, and you're building something that's more platform. So you have to figure out where you're adding value in that ecosystem. And those platforms are really difficult to figure the monetization strategy out. And so if you're thinking about them, you're probably in the right place. But try it out and ask around. Don't be shy about thinking, hey, I'm doing something. Somebody should provide some sort of economic return for what I'm doing. And if you don't do that, people just kind of take it for granted, and they should believe in it because it's a sustainability thing for them.
Cool. Thanks, Julian. All right, one more question here.
So mine's a social collaboration discovery application for built environment professionals, architects, designers, contractors, engineers, trying to improve the way that they share and collaborate around the design and build out of our built space, whether that's commercial, homeowners or restaurants or even public spaces. So what we were thinking is doing a pay for privacy and pay for data model, where they can use the platform for free as long as it's public and they're sharing that information, very similar to like a GitHub model. But again, when they need to use that collaboration, those tools privately, that's where they pay.
Yeah, that whole space is like a decade, maybe 2 decades behind the whole engineering, the architecture space. So a lot of the things that you think are avant that were 5 years old, those are the things that you should probably be trying in your space. So that's probably the right type of thinking. Like the freemium models were probably something that they're just about to adopt. And how do you give like the right levels of communication for free? What are the right ones that you do for private? Is it something that individuals have? Is it a firm? Is it ratings? I mean, there's a lot of things you can do in that space. And technology, I don't think has really entered that space fast enough. I mean, there's a web-based AutoCAD, SolidWorks that's started not that long ago, and if a web version of collaboration tools for architecture is like the best thing in like 2 decades, then not that it's a laggard space, but it's just that it takes longer for technology to reach different places.
How many users do you have?
We don't discuss it just yet. We're pretty new. So we just launched 4 weeks ago. Sorry, we just launched 8 weeks ago.
Cool, congrats. Are you just doing it on credit card and trying to live lean?
Right now we're doing free trials and starting to build out the paid model right now.
Cool.
All right. Hey, while I look for someone else who has a question, just raise your hand if you do. Jeremy, you guys had Twitter as a customer early on, and then you did something that I think is really gutsy. Can you tell people what you did?
Yeah, so a lot of people, again, and I say the experimentation in your business model and experimentation about what you want to do. So we were a very consumer technology company. The retail side, $30, $50 kind of on an average purchase. And we said, wow, we want to take this technology to an enterprise world, because we saw these interesting technology companies, like Twitter when they first started, or Anadarko Petroleum, or MSNBC, a bunch of these companies, and they were charged our $30 a year price. And you actually ask them. I mean, I remember this was when we first started thinking about it. You actually asked them, what would you like us to do differently? And they said, we wish you would charge more, because it's a pain in the neck to go through purchasing and to get the CFO of this publicly traded company to sign off on a $30 PO. It's really embarrassing, actually. And so we thought about that for a while, and us being kind of the utilitarian product people that we are, we said, wow, we should have a different part of the business. And so we started going off and saying, all right, well, we want to have a completely different service offering. And we actually had this conversation with some, as you said, Twitter, and we were asking them, hey, you're using this service, you're paying $30 a year, and we kind of went back and forth, like, well, we don't think you should just be $30, and so we basically said, you know that you're getting an unfair deal with us. And they said, yeah, I guess so. Would you pay more? They said, of course. Well, how much? And then we went back and forth, and it went up more than 10x that day. And that was something that we just hadn't asked about. And they knew that the value was there, and they said that the value was there, but no one's going to volunteer to give you 10x more or 100x more of what they're paying for. And that's just that type of conversation. You have to have a real honest value exchange. And as entrepreneurs and as founders, you really feel cheap. I mean, if they talk about this with artists all the time. They create, they paint, and they say, how much for the art? And they say, like, well, it's art. It's not supposed to have an economic value. And that's just really the wrong way to think about it. I mean, all of us are creating something, and the actual validation, the actual proof isn't about how much, but it is about a fair exchange.
And you didn't have any hesitation about going to a company and saying, that's already paying you, that's already a customer, that's already happy, and saying, I'd like you to pay me more.
Well, honestly, I didn't have that conversation because I was too sheepish. So
Sheepish.
I was too sheepish.
Okay, I relate to that. I think all entrepreneurs, like you said, when you're building it and someone loves it enough to pay, it's a little tough to go. So who did go and ask for more money?
So about that time when we were thinking about going more enterprise, we hired salespeople, we hired a head of, a chief revenue officer, and that was actually one of their first goals was, hey, get this customer to monetize better, but don't lose them.
I see. So I have a researcher who was here who went and talked to people, and asked them what they want to hear from you and what they know about you, including someone at your booth who said, we should find out why, or you should ask why Jeremy's so passionate about staying in New Hampshire. Look at how many startups are here in San Francisco. Look at how many investors are here. Why are you not here?
Who's been in New Hampshire? All right. My goal is for people who have not been in New Hampshire, please, moral commitment, in the next 3 years, go to New Hampshire. Go in July or August because there's a lot of snow right now, and it's probably not the best time to go unless you like skiing. There's a lot that people talk about with geography, and I think that every place is unique and has its special affinities. I certainly have an affinity to the mountains, the ocean, where we are. We're Metro Boston, I'd say. We're 50 minutes from downtown Boston, so we still kind of are in that northeast corridor. But I love New Hampshire. I love the advantages of a smaller pool. There's been digital equipment and plenty of other really exciting, cool companies, Cabletron, Equalogic. There's a Dell and an Oracle that have offices and people that are there. So there's this long legacy that there's really interesting people that have worked on the internet, and I think that place that's special. We certainly love to extol the virtues of New Hampshire, the live free or die state. It's not right for everyone.
Cool. I used to come to this conference before I lived in San Francisco and feel like maybe I'm an outsider. Maybe I shouldn't even try to build anything outside of here. And if I'm really serious, I've got to get to San Francisco.
Yeah, and you're moving to San Francisco?
I moved here, yeah.
Oh, crazy.
I didn't move here for the tech, though. In the end, it came down to the hippie lifestyle.
Yeah, and I think that's really what it's about. It's about the lifestyle that you want to live, and I think that a lot of people talk about the product market fit. A lot of people talk about building. A lot of people talk about customers, but this is ultimately it's a human business. It's the messiness of people. It's dealing with co-founders. It's dealing with kind of personal goals and where people are in their life and whether they're having kids or whether they're separating from their spouse or whether they're happy or not happy. And that really has. I think it's underspoken about because that really is what drives good companies. It's around a leadership team that really believes in a shared vision, and geography is part of that. It's who we are. It's our makeup. It's an extension of our personality, and people have to choose what's right for them.
Well, tell me if you have this. The other day I walked my dog, and I saw someone else walking his dog, but he was in nothing but underwear, just underpants walking his dog. Do you have that in New Hampshire?
Good for him. Yeah, we probably do.
How can you stay there without that?
Live free or die. We have a lot of crazy people that take advantage of that.
All right, here's the other thing we found out. You don't want to hear excuses from people. You just want them to do it. They actually asked us at your booth to ask you about the get shit done attitude that you have.
I love that attitude. A lot of people ask about management styles, and the way I like to think about it is you become completely outcome driven, and then when the outcomes don't work, then you ask about process. And I realized that's a lot of work. And really, you just measure the outcomes and then see what happens.
So give me an example of what you did. Henry Ford famously said to his people, I want the V8 engine. I don't care what it takes, do it. They came back and said, it's impossible. He said, no, there has to be a way. Go back and you'll figure it out. They came back and said, it's impossible. He stuck with it. He forced them to stick with it, and eventually it happened. Do you have an example of something that you said, come on, I know it can be done. I know you think it's impossible. Get it done.
It's the nuance. We actually just went through, we process credit card information. And so for probably the last year, people have said, well, in order to get this next level of PCI compliance, what you have to do in order to be a credit card processor, it's going to take 5 months. There's no way we're going to get done unless it's 5 months. So a product guy sitting around, he's kind of thinking for a while. And it's like, we could do this a completely different way. Like, we have this thought out the wrong way. We should just move this over here. Like, oh. And so they kind of thought about this, and it got done in 2 weeks. And I think it's just really illustrative of people need to figure out how to work smarter because Henry Ford wanted a V8 engine. And I'm sure that it wasn't just people worked harder. That was probably part of the equation. But they also worked smarter. They worked more efficiently. They thought about the problem. They worked with others. And they came up with some creative solutions. And that's really what the alignment is, because we had wanted to do it, this PCI compliance thing. We had wanted to do it, but it was always like that second priority or that third priority. It's just the same way as you said that you wanted to monetize in 6 months. When you have a priority and you really limit what you want to get done, you will accomplish it and you'll knock it off. And that's what I think the specialty of getting shit done is.
Have a priority, limit what you want to get done, and then just do it.
And then just do it.
All right. So what's your next priority?
Just continuing to build the business. We're having a great time and loving the conversations. I mean, this is a good throwback to when we were an early company. So I love just kind of hanging around and talking to people, hearing what their ideas are, and trying to be helpful to pay it forward, because I got a lot of good advice along the way. And
what are you especially eager to talk to people about or help them with? I want to encourage them to come over and ask for help. What are you especially good at helping with?
Probably nothing.
No,
my advice is free, so it is what it's valued at. But I mean, we've gone through the stories of co-founders. We used to have 4 co-founders. I'm the only one that's left, so certainly some good stories there. I'm probably a product type of CEO, so happy to talk about that. And I guess a crazy, quirky person up in New Hampshire. So build on and have a good day.
Cool. Is there a way for people to contact you?
I am Jeremy at dyn.com, jhitchco on Twitter, and I'll be happy to hang around here for a little bit. And I haven't had lunch yet, so if you want to grab some lunch together, I'd love to do it.
Oh, will you put a table together of people who are here who want to go have lunch with you?
I will put a table together. I apologize to whoever the next speaker is for stealing some of your audience, but I'm hungry.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you, Jeremy. Let's
Thanks,
give him a
Andrew.
big round of applause. Thank you.